Why you don't believe that you can add value as an executive in a new role. So, happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. And today I wanted to share with you some insights. I've been talking to a lot of clients who have been feeling that way. I have been getting people who have been booking consultation calls with me at the director level and above who feel that way, and even clients who may not be in people management roles but have upwards of 10 to 20 years of experience who feel that way. And I wanted to talk about that because that is very important. And it's the number one complaint that I get when it comes to fear of applying for jobs or feeling stuck, especially if you are currently in a job that doesn't fill your cup, you're feeling burnt out, and it doesn't feel like the grass is greener when it comes to applying for jobs. I hear this all the time. The economy is bad. I got to lower my expectations. I got to ask for a lower salary. I am in such a tough situation in my current role. I don't have the decision making power I want to make. I'm not making the impact that I wish I could make. I'm around people who don't understand me. It's a toxic environment. I have a micromanaging boss. But despite all of that, I don't feel optimistic about looking elsewhere. And it's kind of sad because it reminds me of how, as human beings, when we tackle challenges in life, even when it comes to health, we tend to not want to do anything about it until things get very, very, very bad. And then we get into a state of urgency and panic where we want to solve the problem very quickly. And if we had tried to address it before, then we'd have more time to make it work, right? So, unfortunately, a lot of people tend to reach out to me when things get very bad to the point where they even quit their job without having anything lined up. And this is why I want to talk to you today, because if you are in this situation, if you are a director, a VP, or you could even be like below that level, and you're feeling the signs of burnout, and in case you're not aware of that because your head is down and you're trying to cope, and sometimes when we're trying to cope and make things work and collect a paycheck, we don't realize how bad the situation is until we are out of it. And so if you are, and I will tell you some of the signs of burnout that I've seen with a lot of folks. If you find yourself thinking about work constantly while you're outside work, while with you're with family members, if you feel like you cannot shut down your brain, if you feel like you are anxious at night, you wake up in the middle of the night, you dread showing up to work the next day, if you are starting to feel physical symptoms in your body, more headaches, even panic attacks, um, you know, just physical signs, illnesses, because you're emotionally basically putting up with it, right? Maybe, you're in meetings and you're constantly butting heads with someone at work. And all of that accumulated, it creates a domino effect. It creates an exponential effect, and it just keeps accumulating to the point where you'll find yourself one day not being able to handle it. You get an outburst, just like what happened to me at one point where I quit over text. And you're not in an ideal situation where you have options. So, those are just some typical signs of burnout. Now, I want to talk to you about some tactical things that you could do to get yourself out of this situation. especially the situation of feeling like you can't do anything about it. A lot of this thinking comes from, if I don't have the exact industry experience, if I don't have the exact title, if my work isn't currently being acknowledged, then I don't have enough value to offer at the executive level. And that thinking is trapping you into not feeling motivated to apply for jobs, not feeling motivated to search, because you don't think that what you're going to do is going to, get you results. And maybe you've tried before and it didn't work. And so you're telling yourself that you either need to lower your expectations or you just give up on yourself. And so I want to change that. I want to change that thinking. So I will tell you that 90% of the time when people come to me and they are in that situation, it's 90% of the time not because they're not competent. 90% of the time, it's a combination of them not being in the right role, or they're not targeting the right roles, and them not communicating their experience in a way that does them justice. That's the bottom line. And so what do I mean? Because even when people tell me, no, I am, communicating my value, I am talking about my experience, I'm doing all the right things. And then they show me their resume, or they share with me what they've, said, the narrative that they've shared with the recruiters. And it turns out that what they're doing is kind of like if a movie showed you a trailer with all the explosions, but none of the plot, right? So you might have all of these impressive moments that you share with hiring managers and recruiters, but the issue is that you're not structuring your experience the right way. You're not telling the story behind your accomplishments and your achievements. And this is why you're not drawing in recruiters and hiring managers. This is why you're creating confusion instead of clarity. So the problem isn't your experience. The problem isn't your experience not being identical to what the hiring manager is looking for. It's how you're burying the best parts about your experience in your whole, basically, word dump. So I worked with an executive. Actually, yeah, she was at the director level, and she wasn't getting a lot of traction in her job search. She was laid off. She was working in the same company for more than 16 years. And it just wasn't landing. And she even hired a resume writer. She paid her $2,000 to build her resume. And then the resume didn't get her traction. It wasn't even remotely reflective of who she was. She felt like it didn't, reflect who she was. It was like a different person to her. So the big thing that we did to solve that problem was, number one, identifying what that role is within her sweet spot. She had the idea that she would end up in a lateral move. But after I went through all of her experiences, and I call it conducting a career audit, we both recognized that she actually could up level to a VP role. Obviously, at first, she didn't believe me. And she went in a little bit of an imposter syndrome mode. But when we worked together side by side, and I helped her sequence her story and highlight what I call her sphere of influence, not just what she did and what the end result was and the impact. And there's a lot of stuff out there around, you got to quantify your experience and that kind of thing. That doesn't actually make you a human. And also, that does not portray you as a leader, because hiring managers and recruiters want to also know your, what I call your sphere of influence, who you were influencing, who were you collaborating with, the cross-functional teams, executive stakeholders, external partnerships? How were you collaborating with them, influencing them, and working with them? What are some of the techniques that you brought in order to do that? And so oftentimes what happens with people's messaging, whether it's on their resume, their LinkedIn, or through conversations, is they focus too much on the process, and they turn what they've done, they describe what they've done in such a transactional way, which completely goes against what a leader does. Because when you're a leader, you spend most of your time building relationships. You're not so much of a doer. You are an influencer. But when you are putting your narrative together, it doesn't come across that way. And again, the analogy that I gave from a movie trailer perspective, you're just showing all the explosions and in the movie, but you're not sharing how that happened. You're not sharing the backstory. And when I work with clients to craft that narrative, all of a sudden, especially for this client who landed a VP role, she suddenly discovers experiences that she thought she didn't have, right? Because when you're trying to just pull a resume together, and when you just write it down on your own, and you don't have someone to talk to and who asks you questions, who helps you dig deeper, you don't remember certain things, and you might think that it's not necessary to show. And so that is the value of partnering with a professional who has context in your field, have a lot of context in the tech world and in the corporate industry in general, 15 years. So I know what to look for and what to probe and what to ask. And yes, Phil, that you are absolutely right. Hiring managers want to know how you deal with various personalities. But I think what people know this, right? But why do they not show that in their resume? Why do they not show that in their LinkedIn? Why do they not show that in networking conversations? Because for some reason, the way we are taught when we are promoting what we've done and when we're talking about our experiences is we're taught to basically match what we've done to what the job posting asks for. And a lot of job postings, the way they describe the roles, sometimes they don't talk about the nuances and what's between the lines. And sometimes there's an over focus on the technical skills versus things like how do you deal with various personalities. That tends to come in interviews and not in the job description piece. And that's why a lot of people and a lot of executives and leaders, they forget to talk about these things in details. Not to mention, I find with executives, you're great at verbally communicating what you've done, but not so much at writing it into a concise narrative. So with this executive, she suddenly discovered experiences that she didn't have. And she realized that she was actually influential enough. We uncovered her extensive executive level conversations with team members that she mentored. And what happened is that because she wasn't formally recognized, she didn't think to mention some of these aspects. So when we package that up into a story with the right structure, because also I want you to think about this, your audience or whoever's listening to you needs to listen to what you present to them in a structured way. Otherwise, they're not going to pay attention and they won't be able to follow. Our brain is wired to consume information in a sequential and structured way. And when you're throwing all kinds of things in your resume and your LinkedIn, and when you talk about your experience, people are not able to connect the dots and they're not able to understand the entire scenario of how you did certain things. So talking about the business problem as an example is where you want to start. You want to create that relatability with an organization. If they're not able to see that you've solved similar problems and you're throwing at them all kinds of things that may not be related, you're creating a lot of cognitive load for the recruiter or the hiring manager. And even if you have that experience, if it's buried, if it's not clear, if it's not structured in a great way, they're not going to move forward with your application, right? So it's like watching a movie again. If a movie has different pieces of plot that are not connected in a cohesive way, you're not going to watch the movie. It's not going to engage you and you're not going to enjoy it. And if the movie does not show you the struggle and the challenges, it's also not going to make you want to watch it. And it's not going to make you appreciate, the explosive scenes, right? So my pep talk today is you got to stop discounting your experience just because you perceive and that it doesn't fit a narrow industry box. I want you to start asking yourself these 3 questions, okay? What problems did I solve that are similar to what this organization that I'm applying to is trying to solve? You can get a lot of these hints by researching the company, reading the news, figuring out the challenges that they're facing. And I want you to think high level, strategically. You're a leader, you're a director level and above, you think strategically, right? So I would not go too granular. I would first think about the big why behind the role and what problem it is solving that aligns with overall business objectives. And as you think of different initiatives you are on, pick something that is relevant to them. And as you talk about the business problem and the business objection, don't forget to ask yourself, who did I influence? Sometimes people, when they present their experience, it's almost like they were by themselves at the organization. And so again, remember the sphere of influence and remember all the different levels at the organization that you worked with. Then the third question that I want you to ask yourself is, how did I transform the situation? And this is a big one that I really, really want you to focus on. Transformation is not, I facilitated a board of director meeting. Transformation is the outcome, the big why behind what you did. And now I don't want you to get imposter syndrome and think, well, if I didn't launch a rocket to the moon, it doesn't count. You simply need to explain basically the win that's tied to the business. It doesn't have to be tied to revenue. It could be tied to a lot of different things. So when you show how your unique pattern of influence, how your outside of the box thinking and impact solves a problem your target role needs to address, and that is often between the lines, then you will become the obvious choice. And then the little tough love that I'm going to give to people. Something that I hear a lot. The first one is, the reason I'm not getting picked is because economically things are bad. You're right. Things are bad. Things are bad. They are more competitive, but it's not like the people that you're competing with are being impacted by a different economic situation. We're all in it together. We're all under the same roof, under the same umbrella of economic situation. And so, yeah, you can blame it on the economic situation, or you can take ownership of what you can control and ask yourself, how can I compete against those people? What is it that I can control that's going to help me stand out? The obvious thing is communication. If I communicate differently in a way that is clear, concise, then obviously I'm going to be the choice. Think even like from a political climate, right? The politicians that often win are the ones who are able to tailor their messaging in a way that convinces people so that they get elected. And I'm not going to get into politics or give my opinion about what's going on because I'm not into that. But I just want you to think of that as an example to help you understand how it is your communication that helps you get the results and helps you get the more competitive roles. And honestly, sometimes it is disturbing and sad because there are people who are effective communicators, but they may not be competent for the role. And again, think about it from a political point of view, right? Just because someone got elected doesn't mean they're competent. The other thing I wanted to say too is I also hear a lot about ageism. It's because of my age, whether I'm older or younger. It's because I'm of a certain ethnicity. It's because of my accent. Well, here's the thing. I'm sitting in front of you. I am a female in tech, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I have people all over the world who work with me. And I can argue that, especially with with executives, sometimes they look at me and there might be that bias. Well, you're younger than me. Why should I work with you? What makes you an expert? But they end up working with me anyway. And I get clients who work with me anyway because of the way I communicate, because of my level of conviction, and because of my level of expertise. So I will tell you right now that if you work on what you can control, it doesn't matter whether you believe that it's an ageism issue. Yeah, of course, there's going to be people who have bias, there's going to be people who discriminate against you. I get people who discriminate against me. I get people who go into my DMs and criticize the way I look, criticize the way I dress, criticize my accent, are sexist, all kinds of things. But I always focus on what I control. And I also understand that not everyone is going to like me. And so if a president who is 78 years old got elected, 78 years old. Like being a president is like probably one of the most competitive jobs in the world. And if someone who is 78 can get elected for one of the hardest leadership roles in the world, then you can land a job regardless of how old you are and regardless of what you perceive are biases that you cannot control. And all you can do in order to achieve your goal is two things. Be clear about your sweet spot. And your sweet spot is not just tied to a title, it's tied to you getting clear on who is your tribe. What type of organizational culture is going to actually jive with you? What is something that is aligned with your area of mastery? Second, know how to communicate your value. And once you know how to do that, then things happen. Things that I consider miracles. I mean, I've seen crazy situations with clients who don't have degrees and land incredible roles at big tech companies. Um, People who thought that, they had to take a step down. I had a client who relocated and thought he had to take a step down from being a VP, and he landed a VP role. It honestly, from my experience, always boils down to your level of conviction, which comes from you being clear on what your sweet spot is and your ability to communicate. Okay, I hope that this was useful. In order to help people who are in a situation where they feel burnt out, I would truly appreciate it if you either, like this, basically LinkedIn Live, so that someone who's having a bad day, who's giving up on themselves, sees this and gets value and gets help. If you are in that position where you're feeling burnt out, obviously you're not going to be motivated to figure this out. You're going to want to work with someone who's going to take you through this step by step so it feels less overwhelming. Someone that you can talk to who can support you through this, because there is an emotional component of feeling burnt out that will start impacting your basically conviction in yourself. And this is where I can come in to help you see that and think outside of the box in terms of how you can present yourself. You are welcome to book a career diagnosis. It is free. It's a 15-minute call to see if we are a fit working together. The other thing that I wanted to make available is, if you are in a position where you've been unemployed for a long, long time and you are at the director level or above, I am offering to one person, and I will do a random draw, a free live resume review. Okay? So in order to qualify for this, you must be willing to be coached live so other people can benefit. And I will share with you my perspective and some of the mistakes you might be making in the way you're communicating your value so that other people can learn. If you want to be selected, then please comment. Don't DM me, comment. And then and then my team is going to take everyone who commented, put them into a random draw, and then we will contact you to be coached by me live to help you communicate and articulate your value in a way that helps you stand out. So feel free to do that if you want to be selected. I wish you the best of luck. All right, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. Let me know in the comments as well if there is a topic that you want me to also dig deeper into. And my door is open. If you have any questions, I'm a DM away, and I am a free career diagnosis away. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.